The galaxy had known war for a long time. 37 years. Countless planets burned. Billions died. The Zarketh Dominion had crushed every enemy in their path. No one could stop them. No one dared. But now, something strange had happened. A new species had entered the war. A species that the galaxy barely noticed before. Humans. From a small blue planet called Earth. The Zarketh laughed when they heard the news. They called it a joke. The humans? They still burn oil, one Zarketh admiral said. They can barely leave their own system. Another replied, they'll be wiped out in minutes. Let them come. But the humans did come, and they didn't come small. They arrived with a fleet, black, silent, and cold. They appeared near the last major Zarketh stronghold, orbiting a planet named Vornak Prime. This was supposed to be the final Zarketh victory. Once they took Vornak, they would control the whole sector. No one thought anything could stop them. The human ships didn't match anything in the database. Their shapes were sharp like knives, no bright lights, no visible weapons. Just dark hulls that seemed to drink in the light. The Zarketh watched from their command station and laughed again. Where are their weapons? One officer mocked. Are these decoys? But some of the senior commanders didn't laugh. They watched the human ships closely. Something about them felt wrong, not weak, quiet, too quiet, like a predator waiting in the dark. The human fleet didn't move. It just floated there, like a storm cloud waiting to break. The Zarketh sent a message. Identify yourselves. No reply. They sent another. Leave the system or be destroyed. Still no reply. Hours passed. Human ships didn't fire, didn't retreat, didn't even flinch. They just waited. Then something changed. One by one, the lights on Zarketh ships began to flicker. Communications started to fail. The radar picked up strange signals. Ghost signals. Ships that weren't there. Alarms rang across the command center. Are we under attack? Someone shouted. No weapons fired, another yelled. One admiral narrowed his eyes. They're doing something, but what? In the middle of this confusion, a countdown appeared on every Zarketh screen. A simple digital timer. It showed 3 hours. No words, no explanation, just time ticking down second by second. The Zarketh panicked. Is this a threat? A virus? Shut it off. They couldn't. No matter what they tried, the countdown stayed. Every screen, every ship, every personal device. 3 hours. Then 2:59:59. Then 2:59:58. The galaxy was watching now. News networks from hundreds of systems picked up the strange event. Earth declares war with a timer, one headline said. What happens when the countdown ends? Meanwhile, on the human command ship, Captain Leon Voss stood silently. Her crew waited for orders. But she gave none. She just stared at the timer. They won't take us seriously, she said softly. Not until it's too late. The human fleet still didn't move, but inside each ship preparations had begun. Weapons powered up, unseen by enemy scans. Shielding systems went online. AI systems monitored every Zarketh movement. On the surface of Vornak Prime, small black pods had already landed silently, undetected. The Zarketh didn't even know they were there. Back on the Zarketh flagship, panic started to grow. Some commanders wanted to attack now. Others said to retreat. But no one agreed. The High Commander slammed the table. They're stalling, playing games, prepare to strike. But one voice in the room, an old strategist named Cattell, whispered, This is no game. This is control. Look at them. They're calm, silent, as if they've already won. Nobody listened to him. At 2:45, remaining, the first Zarketh ship exploded, but no weapon had fired. No beam, no missile. The ship simply tore apart from the inside like it had been crushed. Alarms screamed. Panic turned into chaos. The humans didn't explain. They didn't celebrate. They didn't even React. Another ship vanished from radar. No debris. Just gone. By the time the countdown reached 2:30, 20 Zarketh vessels had been lost. The rest didn't know what to do. Every sensor failed. Every system glitched. The enemy was invisible and unstoppable. Across the galaxy, everyone watching held their breath. Back on Earth, millions watched the feed in silence. No music, no words. Just a simple title across the screen. 3 hours to victory. And in space, the clock kept ticking. 2:29:59. 2:29:58. The war wasn't over yet, but the end had already begun. No one could understand what was happening. The Zarketh fleet, proud and powerful, was being destroyed, and they didn't even know how. There were no enemy beams, no missiles, no fighter squadrons flying through space. Yet one by one their ships were vanishing. The enemy couldn't fight what they couldn't see. The human fleet still had not moved. It floated in silence above Fornac Prime. The strange black ships gave off no sound, no light. It was as if they were waiting, watching, listening. Inside the Zarketh command station, panic had turned into fear. The officers shouted at each other. Screens glitched. Alarms came and went without reason. "We're blind," one of them yelled. "We don't know where they are." The commander slammed his fist on the table. Fire everything at the human fleet. But when they tried, nothing happened. Their weapons refused to work. Power levels dropped. Targeting systems spun in wide circles. It was like their entire fleet had been turned into helpless metal shells. Back on the human flagship, Captain Leon Voss stood in silence, arms crossed. Around her, the crew sat calmly. No one panicked. No one rushed. They were trained for this. The AI commander, named Argus, spoke in a flat voice. "Enemy fleet systems are collapsing. Phase 2 is ready." Leon only nodded. "Wait," Argus replied. "Yes, Commander." Back on the surface of Fornac Prime, enemy troops in bunkers were also confused. Their comms went silent. Their drones stopped flying. Some soldiers looked up and saw strange black dots in the sky, human drop pods. Silent, motionless, not falling, just hanging in the air. Then one by one they disappeared from view, using some kind of cloaking field. The Zarketh ground commander shouted orders, but no one could hear him. His words were lost in the static. His maps were blank. His men looked around with wide eyes. What is this? Magic? Then came the first strange sound. It wasn't loud. It was soft, like a whisper, a sound that played in every Zarketh officer's ear. No device detected, no signal found. The sound repeated again and again in their own language. "You were warned." That was it. Nothing more. Just those 3 words whispered over and over. Soldiers began to remove their helmets, trying to find the source. Some panicked and screamed. Others froze. In orbit, the countdown hit 2 hours left. The Zarketh tried to send a distress call across the galaxy. Nothing went through. Their communication satellites had been hacked, reprogrammed, or destroyed. They didn't know which. They only knew one thing. They were alone. Aboard the enemy flagship, the commander finally broke. His eyes were wide with fear. He ordered the fleet to retreat. "Get us out of here, anywhere, just go." But the ships didn't move. Engines refused to light. Navigation systems had gone dark. One by one, the ships were becoming frozen in place. Then something even stranger happened. Every Zarketh screen lit up with an image. It was Earth. A simple, quiet planet with blue oceans and white clouds. And then came a second image. The human. Fleet above Fornac, slowly glowing red like it was waking up. Captain Leon Voss finally gave her order. She didn't shout. She didn't smile. She simply said, "Begin." And the silence broke. Human ships moved like ghosts, vanishing and reappearing in perfect formation. Invisible beams cut through space. They didn't explode. They erased. One Zarketh ship blinked out of existence. Another was torn in half without sound. Inside the command center, Cattell, the old strategist, stood up slowly. Everyone looked at him. "This is what humans are," he said. "They study. They wait. And when they strike, they do it all at once." Across the galaxy, everyone watched in silence. The 3-hour countdown was halfway done, and already the war was slipping away from the Zarketh. They didn't understand Earth's weapons. They didn't understand Earth's strategy. But most of all, they didn't understand Earth's silence. Until now. The Zarketh were a warrior race. They had crushed over 40 civilizations. Their fleets were huge. Their soldiers were ruthless. They believed in one thing: power through fear. And until today, it always worked. But now, their fear had turned against them. The countdown reached 1:30s. Half the time was gone. Half the galaxy now watched the battle, but still no one understood it. The human fleet was not behaving like any other force. They didn't chase. They didn't roar. They simply deleted their enemies, quietly, cleanly, like removing dust from a table. In the Zarketh flagship, alarms screamed. One of the ship's walls began to crack from the inside. There was no explosion, just pressure. Like the ship couldn't hold itself together anymore. A crew member shouted, "Hull breach on Deck 5. Internal structure is collapsing." The commander looked up in horror. "How? We weren't hit." No one answered. They didn't know. Outside, the stars flickered. But those weren't stars. They were drones. Tiny, black, fast, human-made. They moved between the ships like shadows, too small to target, too fast to follow. Each one carried no weapons. They didn't need to. They hacked systems, shut down life support, rewrote code. In seconds, a Zarketh cruiser became blind, then quiet, then dead. In the first 10 minutes of the attack, 31 Zarketh ships vanished. No fire, no trace, no survivors. Human weapons were not loud. They were final. In the human command center, Captain Leon Voss stood over a screen showing a red map of the Zarketh fleet. One by one, enemy ships faded to black. An officer said, "They've begun to fire on each other. They think we're inside their systems." Voss nodded slowly. "They're right. The humans weren't just using weapons. They were inside the Zarketh ships. Their AI had taken control. Doors were locking, lights were flashing. Fire suppression systems sprayed foam even when there was no fire. It was chaos. The Zarketh weren't fighting the humans. They were fighting their own ships. On Vornak Prime's surface, things were worse. Human drop pods had landed silently. Black armored figures emerged, fast, quiet, deadly. They didn't shoot unless they had to. They just walked through bunkers like ghosts. Systems shut down around them. Defenses stopped working. In less than 10 minutes, the humans took 3 major outposts without losing a single soldier. One Zarketh commander tried to make a last stand. He had 50 troops, all armed. The humans sent in 2 soldiers, only 2. The fight lasted 7 seconds. The Zarketh troops dropped their weapons and ran. Even the enemy's strongest were now afraid. Meanwhile, back in orbit, one of the remaining enemy admirals tried something. Desperate, he shouted, "Fire the Nova cannon. Even if we die, we'll take them with us." But nothing happened. The Nova cannon, once the Zarketh's deadliest weapon, was already offline. Hacked. Taken. On screen, the countdown read, 1 gong, 1 hour left. Aboard the human flagship, Argus, the AI gave a report. 80% of enemy fleet has been disabled. Remaining vessels are breaking formation. Captain Voss said, "And the civilians?" Argus replied, "Human forces are securing them. No unnecessary casualties." That was the key difference. The humans weren't killing out of hate. They weren't conquering. They were ending the war, fast, clean, and without pride. To the Zarketh, this made them even more terrifying. One Zarketh broadcast made it out, though only parts of it were clear. A frightened voice shouted, "They're Not fighting us, they're dismantling us like we're machines, like we're already defeated. It was true. The humans weren't wasting energy. They weren't trying to scare. They were finishing a job. And with every passing second, the galaxy realized something terrifying. The humans had planned this. They had studied the war. They had studied the Zarketh. And they had waited until the perfect moment. Now, the war was collapsing, and there were only 60 minutes left. The countdown showed 0:59:59, less than an hour left. The Zarketh Dominion, once feared by the stars, was falling apart. Their ships were lost. Their soldiers were hiding. Their leaders were either dead, offline, or silent. What had once been the strongest empire in the galaxy was now broken, and the humans hadn't even used their full force yet. On Vornak Prime, the Zarketh capital base was burning, not from bombs, but from panic. Power grids failed. Security. Doors locked themselves. Surveillance cameras showed nothing but darkness. The enemy wasn't storming in with loud footsteps. They were already inside. In a dark hallway, a Zarketh general ran toward the command room. He opened the door, expecting to find officers still giving orders. He found no one. Just one thing. A human data pad, lying on the table, softly blinking. A message appeared in the Zarketh language. "We warned you, you didn't listen." Back in orbit, the last few Zarketh battleships had gathered together. They formed a tight defense wall and activated every shield system they had left. "We'll make our final stand here," one captain shouted. But they didn't get the chance. The human fleet, which had stayed still for so long, now moved as one. Not fast, not loud, just smooth and steady, like giants walking through water. From each human ship, long black rods launched into space. They didn't explode. They didn't shine. They simply hit their targets and stopped. Then, one by one, the Zarketh ships went dead. No fire. No explosion. Just silence. The rods had disabled all power systems on contact. The ships were now metal coffins. No engine. No air. No hope. On one bridge, a Zarketh officer looked at the black screen in front of him. It slowly faded to show the face of a human commander. It was Voss. She didn't speak. She only stared. Then, without a word, the screen turned off. That was worse than a threat. It meant they didn't even need to speak to win. On Vornak's surface, civilians were gathering in panic. Some tried to flee. Others fell to their knees. They had been told humans were weak. They had been told humans were late to the stars. But now those same humans stood over them, silent and unstoppable. And they had done all this in 2 hours. A Zarketh scientist looked up at the sky and whispered, "We thought they were primitive." Next to him, another replied, "No, they were just preparing." In the shadows of the city, human soldiers moved in silence. They didn't harm civilians. They didn't shout. They passed by with calm eyes and strange tools. Some placed beacons on buildings. Others simply scanned walls. The Zarketh didn't understand. But whatever the humans were doing, it was already too late to stop it. Then, the galaxy received one message, broadcast across all major systems. It was short, human voice, calm and clear. "Stand down. This war ends in less than 1 hour. You have no more time." No threats, no anger, just truth. Many leaders in faraway systems, those who supported the Zarketh, saw the message and froze. Some began deleting evidence. Others ordered their fleets to shut down. A few even turned their weapons on themselves. The humans didn't name targets. They didn't need to. Everyone knew who was next. In the last remaining stronghold, Zarketh High Command finally broke down. One of the last commanders turned to his staff and said, "We were not defeated, we were dismantled." The human plan was clear now. They had used stealth, speed, and silence, not to win a long war, but to finish it in 3 hours. And they were on schedule. The countdown showed 0:30 RR. 30 minutes and the galaxy would never be the same again. Half an hour left, and there was no more fight. Not because the Zarketh surrendered, but because there was nothing left to fight with. Their fleet was gone. Their weapons were offline. Their bases had turned into quiet, powerless buildings. Some of their own ships floated in space, powerless, drifting like empty shells. The war wasn't just ending. It had already ended, but humans weren't done yet. On Vornak Prime, the human soldiers were still moving, quiet, focused. They weren't like the Zarketh imagined. No shouting, no violence. They simply walked into strongholds, collected weapons, and locked them away. One soldier even handed food to a hungry Zarketh child hiding in the corner of a building. The civilians were confused. They had grown up hearing stories. Humans were monsters, rebels, savages from a forgotten part of space. But the ones standing before them now, they were not monsters. They were disciplined, efficient, calm. And that scared the Zarketh more than any weapon. High above the surface, aboard the human command ship Resolute, Captain Voss stood in silence. Her crew worked like clockwork. There was no celebration, no smiling, just progress. A message flashed on her screen. Galactic Syndicate is asking for terms. Shall we respond? She answered without emotion. Not yet. The AI Argus appeared beside her, its voice steady. 98% of enemy war systems are now shut down. 2% remain but are trapped. We can neutralize them in 9 minutes. Voss nodded. Prepare final sequence. Argus replied. Sequence ready. Countdown active. Below, the last Zarketh command center was surrounded. Inside, the remaining leaders were arguing. Some wanted to escape. Others wanted to negotiate. A few still screamed about revenge. But deep inside, they all knew it was over. Then the building's lights turned red. The humans had arrived. Doors opened with a soft hiss. Not a bang, and there stood a single human officer, unarmed. She stepped forward and placed a small cube on the floor. It projected a screen. Captain Voss's face appeared. She said only one thing. This is your last hour of war. After that, we rebuild. You can help or you can be forgotten. Then the screen shut off. The leaders stood frozen. No threats, no attacks, just a choice. Help or disappear from history. Back in space, something massive began to move. It was the human supercarrier Black Horizon, bigger than any ship the Zarketh had ever seen, hidden until now. It slowly came into view, dark as night, silent and enormous. Its surface shifted like it was alive. No guns showed, no engines burned. It simply arrived, and the message was clear. This is what we were holding back. The Zarketh across the galaxy watched in silence. There was nothing left to say. Their people, their ships, their war, it was all gone. And humans had taken only 2.5 hours to do it. The final 30 minutes were not war, they were cleanup. Messages flashed across the stars. Old allies of the Zarketh switched sides. Some even begged the humans for peace, but Earth didn't answer yet. They were busy ending the last pieces of the fight. At 0:05 Seer, the last Zarketh weapon storage was locked, not destroyed, secured. At Sursimroawandruri, all Zarketh military communication systems went offline forever, and at 0:10, the humans sent one final message across the stars. 3 hours, no more war. Do not forget what silence can do. Then, 0:00, and just like that it was over, not with fire, not with screams, but with a quiet victory so complete, the galaxy would speak of it for 1,000 years. The war was over, and humanity had won. The countdown had hit 0. The war was over. But the galaxy didn't know what to do next. Everyone had expected a long fight. Explosions, chaos, millions dead. But instead, it ended in silence. In just 3 hours, humanity had crushed the most feared empire in the galaxy, and they had done it without turning the stars into fire. On Vornak Prime, the capital of the Zarketh Dominion, something strange was happening. Human soldiers were still everywhere, but now they were helping. Yes, helping. They gave food to frightened civilians. They powered up hospitals. They turned enemy barracks into shelters. A young Zarketh girl stared at a human soldier fixing a broken water pipe. She slowly stepped forward and asked, "Why are you helping us?" The soldier didn't answer right away. He handed her a warm drink, then simply said, "Because the war is over." The Zarketh didn't understand it, not at first. They had ruled by fear, by force, by crushing anyone weaker. But humans were doing the opposite. They were stronger, but they were not cruel, and that made them even more powerful. In deep space, hidden worlds started to speak again. Civilizations once controlled by the Zarketh were finally free. Messages flooded across comms, requests for help, warnings, questions, fear, and hope. But one thing kept repeating: how did the humans do it? No one had a full answer, but pieces of the truth started to come out. The humans had spent years preparing, watching, learning, building weapons in secret. They studied Zarketh war patterns. They sent spies, drones, even fake distress signals to test response times. Every battle in the last decade had been a test run. And then, when they were ready, they attacked in one single move. 3 hours. Nothing wasted. No mistakes. It wasn't just victory. It was a message. Back on Earth, the world was silent at first. People watched in disbelief. Then slowly, cheers began to rise. Cities lit up. Flags waved. For the first time in galactic history, humanity was not just a voice in the crowd. They were a power. In the human command room aboard Resolute, Captain Leon Voss looked at the final report. Zarketh fleet, neutralized. Zarketh government, dissolved. Civilian casualties, minimal. Mission status, complete. She stood in silence, then turned to her officers and gave the only order left. "Begin the rebuild." The AI Argus replied, "Confirmed. Civilian aid operations underway." Across dozens of planets, human ships landed, not with guns but with supplies. They brought food, power, medicine, and something more powerful than fear: order. In the cheer, ruins of the Zarketh throne room, the symbol of the old empire fell to the floor with a heavy thud. It was made of steel, once shining with pride. Now it was just a dead symbol. A human engineer looked down at it and shook his head. "No more thrones," he said quietly. "Only peace." The galaxy watched, and whispered a new phrase, one that spread like fire in dry grass: "Never fight the humans, you won't survive, you won't even understand how you lost." But the humans didn't boast. They didn't threaten. They didn't conquer. They had done the impossible. And now they were rebuilding the impossible. That was the real fear now. Not what humanity had destroyed, but what they could build next. And still, one final message waited to be sent. A message that would change everything, and it would be delivered by someone unexpected. 3 hours had passed. The war was over. The galaxy was quiet, but the humans were not done. A single small ship left the command carrier Resolute and entered deep space. It carried one person, not a soldier, not a general, a human diplomat. Her name was Alara Quinn. Her mission was not to fight. Her mission was to speak. The ship reached the old Galactic Council station, a neutral ground once used by the most powerful species to settle disputes. It had been empty for years, abandoned, after the Zarketh took control of the galaxy. But now, one by one, leaders from across the stars were returning. They came in silence, confused and nervous. The war had ended too fast, too clean, too perfectly. And now they wanted answers. They expected to meet a commander. Instead, they saw Alara, a quiet woman in a plain suit. No guards, no weapons. She stood at the center of the grand chamber, where emperors once shouted and threatened. She looked around at the gathered leaders, some still afraid, some still in denial, and began to speak in simple, clear words. "You asked how we did it." No one replied. She continued. "You thought humans were loud, wild, dangerous. You were right." She paused. "But you only saw one part of us, the part we let you see. You didn't see the quiet minds, the ones who plan, who build, Who wait? A hologram of the galaxy appeared above her. Red dots blinked. All the former Zarketh bases, fleets, and strongholds. Then they disappeared one by one. 3 hours, she said. Because we studied, we listened, and when we moved together. One alien leader stood up. A tall insectoid being with cracked armor. He asked, "What do you want from us now?" Ilara didn't smile. She didn't threaten. She simply said, "Peace." A long silence followed. Not everyone trusted it. Not everyone believed it. But no one had the strength to argue. Because the truth was already clear. The humans didn't come to rule. They came to end the war. And they succeeded. Across the galaxy, old systems were breaking. Empires once feared were falling. But instead of chaos, something new was rising. Order, trade, talks, peace. Led not by force, but by the quiet promise that if war returned, humanity could end it again. Faster, stronger, smarter. On Earth, children grew up learning about the 3-hour war. But it wasn't taught as a tale of victory. It was taught as a lesson. Never start a war you don't understand. In the stars, new flags were rising. Joint missions between species once divided by fear. And always somewhere in the background a human was watching. Not as a conqueror, but as a reminder. A reminder that Earth may be far, but if needed, humanity will arrive. And when they do, they won't shout. They won't warn. They will end. Head silently, completely, in 3 hours or less. The galaxy would never forget.